Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We are going to continue our reading of St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. It's quite nerdy. Every philosophy student will learn about him and their beginning courses. I'd argue any theologian who really wants to be serious has to read his work, and anyone who criticizes him without having even read his work should be ignored. Okay? And if you want to argue with Catholics and be taken seriously, I do believe you need to have some familiarity with their ideas. And Aquinas is one of their great philosophers, scholars, students of knowledge, scholastics, you name it. Okay. We are on question 5, God and the divine attributes. Second article, whether goodness is prior in idea to being. Let's begin. We proceed thus to the second article. Objection 1. It seems that goodness is prior in idea to being, for names are arranged according to the arrangement of the things signified by the names. But Dionysius assigned the first place amongst other names of God to his goodness rather than to his being. Therefore, in idea, goodness is prior to being. Kind of reminds me of Plato's forms. It's like the chicken and the egg argument, right? The idea of goodness is there prior to it actually existing in its beingness. Okay, so that's objection 1. So, we will go to reply to objection 1. Dionysius discusses the divine names as implying some casual relation in God. So here we're seeing divine names. We have that in Islam. Oneness in Allah's names and attributes. So we see here they also have divine names for their God. Casual relation in God. For we name God as he says, from creatures as a cause from its effects. Okay, so we name God as he says. In Islam, we will call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the names he's affirmed for himself, right? And we also learned in Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab's book that and actually, let me rewind. Dr. Salih Fawzan's Aqidah Tawheed, that creatures can have an attribute that has similarities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not comparable to his creation, and he will have something that befits his majesty. So here we see something similar as a cause from its effects. So the creature will have a name similar to its effects, separate from why the Maker has it. But goodness, since it has the aspect of desirable, implies the idea of a final cause, the causality of which is first among causes, since an agent does not accept for some end, and by an agent, matter is moved to its form. So the first cause, the final cause, the agent, and then moved to its form. Hence the end is called the cause of causes. Okay. The end is called the cause of causes. Thus goodness, as a cause, is prior to being. So Aquinas contends goodness, as a cause, is prior to being. So he sounds to me like he's saying it's the first cause. Okay. Alright? Because for something to have goodness, it has the effect of first being good. So good must be there first to arrive at goodness. The end is goodness, but good is still there. That thing kind of moves towards that goodness, I think is what he's getting at. As is the end to the form, yeah. So, as is the end to the form, Therefore, among the names signifying the divine causality, goodness precedes being. Goodness precedes being. Again, according to the Platonists. Yes. Yes, I was on the right track. Who, through not distinguishing primary matter from privation, said that matter was non-being. Goodness is more extensively participated than being, for primary matter participates in goodness as attending to it, for all seek their like. Okay, so primary matter participating in goodness, but it does not participate in being, participating in being, since it is presumed to be non-being. So goodness is non-being. It doesn't have, because matter was non-being, and goodness is something that participates rather than it being something. And then primary matter has to participate in goodness. So if it is a primary matter, it's going to be separate. So you have primary matter, and then you have being, and then you have participation, since it is presumed to be non-being. Therefore, Dionysius says that goodness extends to non-existence. Oh, cool. That's an interesting point. Goodness extends to non-existence. Okay, now we're going to go over to objection 2. Further, that which is the more extensive is prior in idea. But goodness is more extensive than being, because as Dionysius notes, goodness extends to things both existing and non-existing. Okay, so goodness extends to things both existing and non-existing, whereas existence extends to existing things alone. That's true. That's quite true. Because existence can't literally extend to non-existence, because they're opposites. Therefore, goodness is in idea, prior to being. Okay, so he contends, subjectioner, goodness is in idea prior to being. So, goodness is an idea, it's prior to being. Okay. Reply, objection 2. The same solution is applied to this objection, where it may be said that goodness extends to existing and non-existing things, not so far as it can be predicated, not so far as it can be predicated of them, but so far as it can cause them. Indeed, by non-existence we understand not simply those things which do not exist, but those which are potential and not actual. Okay, so potential, actual. For goodness has the aspect of the end. Goodness has the aspect of the end. Above, he mentioned goodness precedes being. Okay? That goodness as a cause is prior to being, as the end to the form. Now, over here, he's hinting at that as well. For goodness has the aspect of the end. To arrive at the actual state of goodness, you have the potential to be good, or the actually being good, and then you have goodness itself, in which not only actual things find their completion. See, so in which only actual things find their completion. So they find their completion. It's like this process, right? And then you see here that goodness is here, and then whatever that primary matter is, it's a non-being. Okay? And that goodness is extensively participating in that primary matter becoming good, right? But also towards which tend even those things which are not actual, but merely potential. Okay, so actual, merely potential. Now being implies the habitude of a former cause, only either inherent or exemplar. Okay, so that's true. Inherent or exemplar. An exemplary example of goodness, an inherent mode of goodness, and its causality does not extend to save. Okay, its causality does not extend save to those things which are actual. Okay. Objection 3. Further, what is the more universal is prior in idea. Okay, so what is more universal is prior in idea. So the idea is prior, and if it's that, it's going to be more universal. But goodness seems to be more universal than being. Ooh. Yeah. Since goodness has the aspect of desirable, whereas to some non-existence is desirable. For it is said of Judas, "It were better for him if that man had not been born." Therefore, in idea, goodness is prior to being. So he contends, in idea, goodness is prior to being. Okay, and then goodness, he asserts, is more universal than being. Mentions desirability. Alright. Reply, objection 3. Where are you? Here we are. The font is quite small. Non-being is desirable not of itself, but only relatively, i.e., inasmuch as the removal of an evil, which can only be removed by non-being, is desirable. That's an interesting way to look at it, because my mind was going towards when people are suffering that they want to not exist. So people actually can crave to not exist. But us Muslims, we're not supposed to crave for not wanting to exist, right? Not supposed to long for death. But he mentions here removal of an evil. But then we wonder, because the removal of the evil will make it not exist, and that desirability of the evil of being a non-being is relative, but it still shows that non-being is desirable, but it depends on what it's being put on, is what I think he's getting at. Which can only, but goodness is always wanted. Goodness is always desirable. Whereas non-being, sometimes you want to not exist, and sometimes you do want to exist. Sometimes you do want something, and sometimes you don't want something. But if someone doesn't want goodness, that'd be quite more rare. And since some more people want goodness, that would make it more universal. Just due to the rate of it, right? Inasmuch as the removal of an evil, which can only be removed by non-being, is desirable. Now, the removal of an evil cannot be desirable, except so far as this evil deprives a thing of its some being. So, as this evil deprives a thing of some being happy, being healthy, because the evil takes away something good by its mere existence, right? Evil deprives a thing of something. Evil deprives you of the state of goodness. Therefore, being is desirable of itself, and non-being only relatively, inasmuch as one seeks some mode of being of which one cannot bear to be deprived. Thus, even non-being can be spoken of as relatively good. Okay, so being is desirable of itself, whereas non-being, just relatively. But he recognizes that it's inasmuch as the mode of being, how it relates to deprivation. You don't want to be without it, or you want to be without it. Okay, now we're going to go to objection 4. Further, not only is existence desirable, but life, knowledge, and many other things besides. Thus it seems that existence is a particular appetible, and goodness a universal appetite. Therefore, absolutely goodness is prior in idea to being. Okay, so therefore, absolutely goodness is prior in idea to being. So that goodness as an idea is there prior to it becoming actual, or to its end, to its final form. Goodness precedes being. Okay, so goodness is prior in idea to being, and then goodness is prior to being. Okay. MashaAllah. On the contrary, it is said by Aristotle that the first of created things is being. I answer that an idea being is prior to goodness. Okay? An idea being is prior to goodness. So you can be without actually being good or possessing any good. For the meaning signified by the name of a thing is that which the mind conceives of the thing and intends by the word that stands for it. Therefore, that is prior in idea, which is first conceived by the intellect. Okay, prior in idea, which is first conceived by the intellect. So, the idea being conceived by the intellect, that resides in a being, right? Because a person is a being. So, goodness, the question is, reminds me of like, goodness is going to exist regardless of if the human mind grasps it or recognizes it. Because everything is knowable only as much as it is in actuality. That's a good point. That's a good point. Notice this. So if you want to conceive something through your intellect, you have to actually know it, because through it actually existing. You come to know something through the intellect when it has actuality. So it's almost like, because see, Aristotle's like, look to the earth, that famous painting. Look here, see what's going on. Plato's like, look there. So you seem to have the forms out there, the image of the perfect chair, even though you may not see the perfect chair. Whereas someone might say, I saw and made the perfect chair, and it was conceived through my intellect, through an idea in my head, and I made it actual, and it became the good chair. Then one would argue, you don't know what the best chair looks like, or a good chair really looks like. And then you would argue over semantics. This is interesting. Hence, being is the proper object of the intellect. Okay, so being is the proper object of the intellect. The intellect has to be, and is primarily intelligible, as sound is that which is primarily audible. Oh, that's a good point. Sound is primarily audible, because if you can't hear it, you wouldn't be able to say that it's actually there. Therefore, an idea being is prior to goodness. An idea being is prior to goodness. That seems like a testy one. Because goodness precedes being. An idea is prior to goodness. Goodness as a cause is prior to being, as is the end to form. It's a very difficult one, but it's very nerdy to think about. If goodness is prior an idea to being. I think I'm of the opinion that goodness just exists and then comes into actuality. And then we get to perceive it. But that then gets into the question of what is good. Which he'll get into later. Reply objection 4. Life, wisdom, and the like are desirable only so far as they are actual. They actually exist. Hence, in each of them, some sort of being is desired. Okay, so in life, there's a being that's desired. In wisdom, there's a being that's desired. So, something that is actual and tangible and conceivable, recognizable, and can come to an end in you. There's an idea in those concepts that you perceive as good, and you want to get that good. And thus nothing can be desired except being. And consequently, nothing is good except being. Ain't that witty? That's a statement. So nothing can be desired except being. Notice what he means by that. So you want life. That's your being in life. You have life. You're actually in life. Okay? You want wisdom. You have to actually have the wisdom in existence and then be in that wisdom. A being of wisdom. So the mode of being is in those terms. You have to be alive. You have to be someone with wisdom. Wisdom has to actually be in existence. So you are wanting being. It's just in what expression, if you really look at it. And then consequently, nothing is good except being. That one is a tricky one, because when I read that, I think being evil isn't good. But then again, you'd realize that evil is the absence of good. Evil takes away from good. Because remember, evil is the removal of good as well. And then evil cannot be desirable so far as the evil deprives a thing of some being. Man, it's really quite intense. Really quite intense. The God and the divine attributes. Question 5, second article. Let me know what you think. Who do you side with? The objectioner or the responses? Implying some casual relation in God, the divine names. And then from the creatures, their attributes come from the effects, as a cause from its effects. So that's something. Their attributes come from some effects. But that would be a separate category than God's divine names. And then he mentioned again, goodness has aspects of desirable, and that it implies the idea of a final cause, and the causality of which is first among causes, since an agent does not act except for some end. So an agent does not act except for some end, that end being goodness. So the idea of goodness has to be there, and the agent acts upon it to get to the end of goodness. And that agent, it's matter, and it's moved to its form. And the end is called the cause of causes. Thus goodness as a cause is prior to being, as is the end to the form. Very unique. Very unique. Very heavy reading. So entertaining, though. It's like, wow. It's a roller coaster, but it's fun. Let me know what you think. I would love to see what you guys have to say. And what do you think? Is goodness prior an idea to being? If you'd like to support the channel and join the blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/Milahan Archive. Hope to see you there.